Good evening. My name is Arlene Miller, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this edition of Our Town. My guest tonight is Robin Crosby,
Hi.
our town manager. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. The purpose of this interview is to review the annual town meeting warrant. Every household in Longmeadow had this delivered to them the week of May 15th-ish in the reminder.
April.
April 15th, thank you. In the reminder, the annual town meeting is Tuesday, May 8th.
Yes.
Okay, then the 15th. So the 15th was on my mind because that's a special election.
That's correct.
That's why it was on my mind. But this is our script for this interview is totally this document. We were just saying before we were taping that there's so much information in here, and I would challenge each of you who are listening to look at this, spend some time looking at this. This is your town. This is about what the town is going to spend, how it spends its money, how it does its programming. This is it.
Yes.
So it's really important information.
Well, and the budget is always the document that you use to say this is what we're going to do next year,
right,
if there are any changes, or this is what we're changing in the coming year.
This is the planning guide.
That's right.
This is the planning guide, and this planning guide takes the people we pay to run our town spend enormous amount of time working on this, building up to this meeting in May every year, and after that they live off of what decisions the town members make,
right,
meeting members make. After that, so it's an important thing to be involved with this and understand it. So we're taking your time and our time to try to explain this to you so that we're all better prepared to go to the annual town meeting, and if you don't go to the annual town meeting, at least to understand what's going to be discussed and voted on at the annual town meeting. So let's talk about this. The town meeting, help me out here, the town meeting is, the purpose of it, under Massachusetts general law, is to appropriate money and to decide bylaw issues.
Right. The town meeting is the legislative body for the town.
Right. So it's not like we talk about what day the school's going to open, but we talk about bylaw issues and financial issues.
It's essentially our local version of Congress.
Okay.
Which is appropriating money and enacting laws.
So I know when we've talked, the last time we talked, which was a while ago, it might have been a year ago, but I don't think so. I think it was in the fall. The building process for the budget process begins?
Probably in September.
Okay. So a good 9 months before this document becomes
9 months before this document, and also contemplating where we're going to be a year and a half or almost 2 years later.
Yeah.
At the end of June 2013, we're planning for that in September of 2011.
Yeah, that's hard for people to comprehend.
Yes, we're planning
a long time before this happened. And then it says in this document, which I've read not word for word, but pretty much, you build the budget. Somebody gives budget guidelines. Right. Okay, why don't you could explain the process?
Well, typically what we do is in the fall, the select board, myself, the finance director, the finance committee, the school committee will confer about where we are, what we anticipate the revenues to be, where we're ending up, where we'll end up in the present fiscal year, which is fiscal year 12. What are some of the objectives for the next budget?
So
what our
objectives
needs are.
Might be roads. It might be IT.
Right, and then we'll also talk about where we think the revenues are going to come in, and what we would like to do in terms of allocating those revenues. This year, the board felt very strongly that they wanted to level fund budgets unless there was documentation where those budgets shouldn't be level funded. For example, fuel costs are going up.
And down.
and
up
down.
and down.
But right now they're pretty high, and you know how we'd like to formulate the budget going forward. Sometimes we'll say there's this amount of money, and we want it to allocate so much to the schools, so much to the town. But this year it was basically level fund your budgets and explain where there are any variances if you don't level fund them.
But is it fair to say if you're convening in the fall and having this conversation, you have a pretty vague idea, I'm guessing, about how much revenue you're going to get?
Yes,
and so you're going through this process, and that number becomes clearer
as time moves.
As time moves forward, and hopefully by May, it's clear.
We do hope so. Sometimes it's not clear until after the fiscal year closes and we're into the new fiscal year. This year, though, it looks like the House, the Mass legislative body, the House, which is the one that really puts the budget on the table first, proposes the budget, seems to have moved forward pretty quickly with the budget.
And so that affects local aid.
And in fact, their proposal, local aid has changed since this was published. The proposal from the House indicates that our net local aid may go up, if it's passed by the Senate and signed by the governor, may go up by as much as $198,000.
Oh, terrific!
The net.
Yeah. So that would affect this.
That would, in other words, that would affect this. Yes.
Okay. Well, there's.
In as much as we wouldn't need to raise as much from, say, property taxes.
Right, or there'd be more money in our reserve.
Or there, yes.
Okay, so it's Long Meadow going into this process was even though we came through a horrific event in October 2011.
Yes.
That was very expensive, and sort of as we go through this, that'll be weaved into that, how we're dealing with that. But our reserves
are in
our
great
free
shape.
cash and our operating enterprise funds and our capital enterprise funds and our other reserves that we've been carefully guarding are pretty healthy.
Yes, our general fund budget is about $52 million, and we have probably almost $4 million in reserves.
Total.
A little bit, total.
Yeah.
A little bit over that.
So when you're building this, you're not frantic about making cuts. This year was not a big cut discussion as much as a develop a budget discussion.
No, because unlike a couple of years ago when our motor vehicle excise fell off and our permit fees fell off, we're seeing...
And state revenue.
State revenue plummeted. We're seeing gradual incremental changes. And in addition to that, we've also been able to, as you know, through health plan redesign and enacting health plan redesign and locking in some energy, reduced energy rates, we've been able to save some money. So a combination of a gradual upswing in some revenues and saving money in some other areas has combined to make it possible for the town to basically budget what's in here
with confidence.
Right, and not even using reserves, which occasionally we have in the past.
Right. So the theme is not going to be, oh my gosh, what are we going to cut? The theme is going to be, let's look at the programs here and the issues at the town meeting. The budget might not be confrontational. It doesn't sounds like everybody's on board with the budget as presented. So let's, with that as the backdrop, let's sort of get into the warrant, because the warrant has about, and again, there's other issues we can talk about. As I read it, 28 articles.
Yes.
And again, this is going to be our script, so bear with us as we sort of go through this. Traditionally, there are some boilerplate articles, and then there's some financial stuff that could be confrontational, and typically there were some petition articles that often take more time than anything else at the town meeting. So I'm just going to sort of, and you can pick and choose too. So 28 articles is the script we're looking at. We're not going to talk. Trust us, we're not going to talk about every one of them. But right off the bat, we appoint trustees to the William Goldwaite bequest. You don't have to go into it; it's a traditional thing every year. But then you come right up to the storm cleanup. Why don't you explain Article 2?
Article 2 is to appropriate $890,000 from what typically we call free cash. We had about $12 million in storm-related damage.
From the October
storm.
Right.
We're anticipating that we're going to be reimbursed 75% of that.
By FEMA.
By FEMA, and we've processed the paperwork and are continuing to process the paperwork on that. So the town is responsible for somewhat about $3 million for that. And we've borrowed for that. And we're going to be having to pay up a portion of that back. So
okay.
This is the cost for borrowing and paying our portion of that.
So this is paying some of the principal on that $3 million?
Borrowing and the interest.
And the interest. Okay. Yeah. And how long is that?
Well, initially we were only allowed to borrow for 2 years, but the legislature has changed it, so we'll be looking to permanently borrow. But the legislature has changed the allowances so that communities who have to pay for emergencies like this have up to 10 years.
Oh, great.
But it was 2. So somewhere along the line, we'll decide how long we'll permanently borrow for.
So the next one is just for ice and we deficit spent for snow removal last year. Apparently, it's hard to believe because we didn't have. Well,
most of this $44,000 was for the storm, and we'll get reimbursed for it.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so that's.
But we still have a deficit until we pay for that.
Great. And then 4 is sort of this annual thing we have to do with the high school vending machines in order to set up. Every year we see that. Every year it comes back.
We have to appropriate that money.
5 is the Chapter 90 road money, the state road money that we have to say yes to. But 6 is the budget.
6 is the budget.
Is the budget. So the budget this year is I thought you just said 52 million. I thought I said 56 million.
That was general fund. But this is
The entire budget is about. So why don't you give us some of the highlights of the budget? How much is the school total budget?
Sure.
Anything? And that's all in here in this.
That's right.
Booklet.
The budget overall is about $57 million, and that includes all fund sources: water, sewer, ambulance, revolving funds for park and recreation. It also includes
that's why you were distinguishing between general fund budget and
Right, and it also includes capital as well. Our budget process includes appropriating capital. Of that, let's see what do we have. General government is which is selectmen, finance. That portion is about 1.3 million, and it's up about 2.7%. Or it's up, it's 2.7% of the entire budget. Schools, education, 30 million. It's about 58% of the budget, exclusive of benefits and so on. But overall, the 2-year trend is is pretty positive. Municipal, a 2-year trend you'll find in here is about, it's been up about 2.8%. Education, a 2-year trend up about 5.5%. Employee benefits are down almost 3%. The big change we're seeing is in debt service because the full amount of the borrowing for the school finally comes into play.
So for the new high school?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's been the biggest driving factor in any increase, the increase overall in the budget.
Yeah, okay, so this is, that's great. So the budget, again, is as I'm understanding it, unless I'm missing something, has been approved by the school committee, the finance committee, and the select board, as presented.
Yes.
So we don't expect a huge budget fight on town meeting floor?
No.
Great, great. Then the next big one that sort of jumps out at me is Article number 8, and this is brought by petition. And I'm just going to read this. The first paragraph just says, to see if the town will vote to approve a senior tax proposal as presented by the Long Meadow Council on Aging that would give a property tax reduction to Longmeadow residents who are 70 and over, lived in town for 10 consecutive years, and whose retirement income does not exceed designated limits or designated limits, period. So I want to sign up. I imagine this is going to be, I don't think I'll qualify, but I think this is going to be very confrontational.
I think there's going to be a lot of debate around this. What this actually requires is that there be a sum of, I think the finance director said, about $109,000
set aside
for this purpose, and that was not included in the budget.
Okay, so that would be an add-on to the
that would be an add-on to the budget, and
so that's handled much like the assessors, and I'll get the words wrong,
right,
have a pot
overlay,
like that, an overlay account. That so if I'm a resident, I come in and I say that I think you're overestimating my home's worth and
right,
overtaxing me, they use that for their abatement fund.
That's right. So and typically what we do is we say this is the whole sum of money that we think we're going to have. And then we start slicing off what is that has to be set aside, which is the overlay account, which are state assessments and things like that. So we whittle that down. We say, okay, this is what's essentially available for us overall, and then what other fixed costs do we have, which is health insurance and property and casualty insurance and debt and all of that, and then you get down to what your discretionary funds are, and that's typically where the discretionary funds are allocated for operations, school, DPW, finance, whatever. Yeah, but in this case, if this is passed, it will require that we take $109,000 from some function or find $109,000 or thereabout and allocate it for this purpose.
Right, not knowing if it would be spent, because it's like the overlay account.
That's right.
So to be fair to to proposers of this, as I understand it, the goal of this tax reduction for residents who are 70 and older is to try to provide a means by which some of our senior citizens may be able to stay in their home longer.
Right.
I mean, I was telling my husband I do Meals on Wheels, and I think it's great that we can help people stay in their homes. I don't know, how much I'd want to. I would like my taxes reduced too, but I mean, everybody would say, raise your hand if you want your taxes reduced. Everybody would raise their hands, but this is to try to help those in need. Elders in need who have been in town more than 10 years. I can just imagine the conversation. I'm looking forward to the conversation at the town meeting. This is going to be interesting, and I'm sure there are pros and cons.
Yes.
To this, and I know a lot of work has gone into this.
And it really is a policy issue.
Yeah.
It's really, it's not so much we need to repair these streets, but how are you balancing the needs of people in the community relative to serve, who pays what, and it is a big policy discussion.
But it is attached to income.
Yes.
And it has language in here that discusses assets. So if my Mercedes is in the driveway, my income meets the level, but I have a Mercedes, a new Mercedes in the driveway, I might not get away with, getting the thing. There's all kinds of review that would go into somebody getting this.
Yes, and this is also an initiative that has been proposed in a couple other communities, including Sudbury, and I think the jury's still out on
the value of it.
And the implementation and efficacy of it, yeah.
The other question I did have with it, and I'm not sure you can answer it, but I may ask it on the town meeting floor, is I do know of at least one, and I think two other mechanisms that are currently in place.
We have several mechanisms.
To give tax relief to seniors.
Yes, and in fact, in the assessor's office and at the adult center, they have sort of a matrix, very easy to follow. If you're this age and your income is this, you can file. We also have the senior work-off program.
Yeah, that's the one of them I'm familiar with.
And we also have, as you know, the I don't want to call it senior, but the housing rehabilitation
from the
plan that helps people stay in their homes as well.
But this mentions the circuit breaker and I don't know what
That's
that
right,
is.
the circuit
So that's another
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. It's a state thing where people can apply for relief.
Right.
Yeah. So there are other mechanisms in place. This would be yet another
Yes.
mechanism, and perhaps a larger one. But a
Right.
lot of so I know for myself, I need to do some more homework on this, and I hope there's some information out there about it. But I'm sure at town meeting, a lot of information will be forthcoming.
There'll be a lot
about-
of discussion about this.
because it's not a cheap item, and that's $100,000 potentially a year.
That's correct.
We don't know how many people would apply or how many people would qualify.
That's correct.
But it's a long article. It's worth looking in advance. If you're going to town meeting and haven't heard anything about it, you're going to be confused if you don't read about it in advance. The next one I wanted to talk a little bit about was Article 9. We did create an employee benefit stabilization fund some years ago.
Yes.
So what is this article? Is this just adding to that? Is that what this is doing?
No, this is part of the implementation of the change in the health plan design.
Yeah. That's taking money out for that.
This is the mitigation portion of
Okay,
that.
so maybe we should
We have
explain that.
$478,000 in an employee benefits stabilization fund, and there's
Which was set aside on purpose at a town meeting some years ago.
yes
To
to sort of mitigate the ups and downs of employee benefits, health insurance, or particularly around health insurance.
Right.
But as a result of changes to Chapter 32B, which is the statute governing health insurance and other types of insurance for employees, the towns now were able, and you were very closely involved in this through Scannick Valley Regional Health Trust, are now able to redesign health plans so that they meet the most subscribed plan that the state offers its employees. Long Meadow went through that process and adopted it. There's an approximately $300,000 in savings to the
It
town.
has to be more than that if it's 125 mitigation.
Well, it's the net savings for the town side, because the
right.
total savings include the
Right.
employees,
The employees
as well.
was about 500.
So, but as a condition of that, in the first year of implementation, the town needs to provide mitigation to those employees. And overall, the premiums are going down, but co-pays and some of the deductibles are going up. And so we met with employee representatives and crafted a mitigation plan, and this is to fund that.
Right, but even though we're taking this money, just to be clear, even though we're taking this money out of our employee benefit stabilization fund to, as terms of an accounting thing, to pay that, the money is really being created, the $125,000, from the savings of the of the new fashioning of the health plans.
The savings have been incorporated into the operating budget. This is a one-time cost.
Exactly.
So we're using this stabilization fund to address a one-time cost.
Right, but it's not that. It's different in my mind that it's costing us to make those changes. It really didn't cost us to make those changes. We're saving a great deal making those changes, and this is just an accounting way of reflecting that.
That's
our obligation under that savings to the employees. So that's great. So we, at some point, we'll probably put that money back in when it becomes available to the Employee Benefit Stabilization Fund, just to fix. As money becomes available, they'll want to feed that fund, probably.
I can't answer that.
I know
that's speculation.
I'm just talking. That's right. So exciting news in Article 11. You're going to be grinding some stumps. I know a lot of people will be happy. You're going to be out there. We have a lot of dead stumps on the tree belt. This is the beginning.
Yes, the DPW director is formulating a long-term plan to mitigate the number of trees and stumps we have out there. $20,000 is sort of a placeholder, a reminder that we have quite a bit more to do than that.
But it'll start.
It's just a start, and while we're formulating a long-term plan for addressing the trees that remain hazards and are at risk of dying and disease.
Right. So Article 12 is a staple for the town meeting, and that's the capital projects article, where we, not every community has this, but we have a capital planning committee, and we have a capital stabilization fund, which is terrific in terms of the management of the town. And that helps. Why don't you explain how this process gets here, and then what's happening with it?
Yes, starting about this time every year, we begin assembling and updating our capital plan. We have a 5-year capital plan. Overall, we have 20-year plans for water and sewer, but we sort of have a revolving, an updated 5-year plan. So we assemble submissions from other departments, update, shift around those items that are in our 5-year plan, and bring forward a list of items.
But the capital planning committee is intricately involved.
Yes, well, typically it starts at the staff level. It gets transmitted to the select board and the capital planning committee, and the select board basically says, this is how much we're going to set aside for capital.
Right.
Last year and the year before it was about $650,000. This year it's $874,000, plus we have a carryover of about $300,000 in completed balances remaining from completed capital projects.
That always have to come back into the fund. So what I don't understand, I mean, there's a whole bunch of lists, and again, I leave it to the people who are listening and going to town meeting to read these lists and decide, you know, if this is good. This is scrutinized by a lot of people and scrutinized by the select board, and this is what it is. So I'm not going to debate that. But what I don't understand is that there's a section in here that says, I'm not even understanding if you're asking us to vote on that or not, but it says pending.
Yes.
You know, in other words, we're going to approve it, and we may not spend it. Is that what it says?
Well, yes, I think that might be it. There's been a lot of debate over the last few years. The DPW director has a plan for vehicle replacement and
fleet management.
And the capital planning committee has wanted some validation of that plan. So we've gone out for a fleet allocation analysis. We've engaged a consultant.
We've already approved that spending.
That's right, and the consultant has been engaged. And within the next, I'd say 6 to 8 weeks, we should have a report from them that says, you know, here's what you should have in your fleet based on your uses. And if these are items that are included in that,
which is what's anticipated,
then this money will be released for purchase of these vehicles.
So who's evaluating the Bliss tennis courts?
The Blinn tennis courts.
The Blinn tennis.
We are working on getting a plan together for that. There are several things. A couple options come to mind. We started resurfacing them, and now there's a discussion that it's more than resurfacing. We need to, you know, take them out, rebuild them, put in fences, redo the lighting. We need a more comprehensive plan, which of course is quite costly. So the thought is, let's set aside this money, much as we're doing with the fire truck reserve.
Yes, which is.
And when we have a plan in place and everybody agrees on it, we've got the money.
So you're building a fund for the eventual rebuilding of the Blinn tennis courts.
That's right.
Okay, I get that. That's great that we're in the position that we can do that. I mean, that's thinking forward. All right, good, excellent. I'm getting educated. Thank you very much. Then we get into a series of articles, water and sewer line upgrades. Is my fair about that? 13, 14,
infrastructure,
15,
yes.
Infrastructure. Language in here that says being repaid from water receipts or sewer receipts, and the things I don't understand about it is, we allocate the money and then we repay it, or is this out of the general fund and then we repay it? And why a 2/3 vote?
Well, if you can see, it says to see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer to borrow. That requires a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
It's the borrowing that requires a 2/3 vote. And it would be essentially long-term borrowing, in which case the interest and principal would come from water and sewer and water receipts.
So that's what that's. So it doesn't really come out of the general fund. It comes out of the borrowing. Terrific. See, I am learning. This is great. So what's 16? Oh, the optical, the
Yes.
town-owned, what is that?
fiber
Very
optic.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, presently the town has a lease. We lease through Verizon a service called MECnet, which provides us with a certain level of fiber optic
You mean
capacity.
wireless or high
No,
speed?
no, no. It's more like high-speed cable.
Don't speak too techy
Well,
to
I
me.
can't. You know, I'm not the technical one, and
Okay.
if you need to get Kevin in here for
Well,
that.
I wouldn't understand them, so that's...
But we've reached what we're leasing it. It costs us about $100,000 a year, and does not provide us the capacity that we need. The proposal is that for $440,000, we will construct our own fiber optic network. We will no longer have to lease at $100,000 a year. The fiber optic...
4 years would pay it off.
4 years. The fiber optic network will be designed around our needs and be sufficient for our capacity.
Don't we go to wireless? How do you do that? What's the connection? Do you understand?
Well, you know, that's
Good question.
a
Okay.
good question,
Yeah, I
and
don't
probably
understand.
a topic for another day.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so it's a cost saving. We think a long-term cost-saving measure.
Yes, yes.
Okay, a little bit of money up front for a long-term cost-saving measure. Okay. Article 17 is the mandated by Proposition 2.5 reeval,
Yes.
which happens every 10. I thought it
years.
was 3 years, but every 10 years.
We
And so
have several levels. We have
it's a property
sort of
evaluation.
interim
Reevaluation.
every year, and then every 3 years we have a revaluation, and then every 10 years you're required to do what's called a measure and list, which means that every property is visited by the assessors or representative
Inside
field
and
rep.
outside.
Inside and outside. They walk the property, they count, you know, your fixtures, your bathrooms, your, you know, whatever, your bedrooms, and they're required by law to go out and look at every property.
This is another one of those unfunded mandates.
That's correct.
This is the one that fries me a little bit, but this is, so we set aside, this is about $100,000 exercise.
Right.
Okay. Then this is-
200,000. This is the first year.
of it. Okay, it takes 2 years
It's
to do
going
it.
to, well, no, we're setting aside 100,000 this year, 100,000
Excellent.
next year.
Excellent. So I don't understand 18 much at all. It sounds like you just want, it's a zoning bylaw word change.
Right.
But it's one word.
Right.
And what is it trying to accomplish? Do you-
It has to do with
Fences.
setbacks.
It says a fence.
Yes, but there are primary setbacks and secondary setbacks.
And that has
this
to do
will
with the
correct-
line of where your house is, right?
Yes.
Primary and secondary.
Yes, and we had a zoning lawsuit around this, and the recommendation was, in order to make this very clear, we need to just amend it by adding the word line.
So it's the line from the front of the setback that's that we're talking about most
Yes,
likely.
it's here. It says the primary setback
Which is the-
line, which
okay.
is
The
it's
front
the
of the
face
house.
of the house,
Front of the
right?
house. Okay. Interesting. That will be a little confusing, I'm guessing, as well.
It's everything's in the details.
Yeah,
you
everything
know?
is in the detail. So the next group of articles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are all community preservation
Yes.
articles. And why don't you explain that process? You know, we don't have to go through every one of these, but
Well, the Community Preservation Committee sends out, usually in the autumn, a call for proposals, I would call it, and invites departments and community groups to submit proposals. The proposals are, and Arlene, you sit on the CPC, so you know all the details about this, but community preservation funds can be spent for open space, they can be spent for housing and historic preservation.
and recreation.
Well, open space
Minimally.
and recreation, yeah.
Or 4 different
With certain limitations. But so every year, the town submits some requests, as do community groups, and this is the culmination of that process with the recommendations of the Community Preservation Committee.
Right, and the process is, just to clarify a little bit, is that the Community Preservation Committee votes on the proposals that they're going to put forward. And they bring them forward to town meeting, and town meeting has to approve them or disapprove them. They can't amend them. So it's either up or down on these various articles, and there's 8 of them. And again, you can read them, and I encourage everybody to do that before the town meeting.
Well,
but
this has been a great mechanism, though, this Community Preservation Act for the town. We've been able to address, as you know, a number of our historic buildings, municipal buildings.
right, the center school.
Center School, the community house, the town hall, the library, the old town hall.
And those are prominent again in this.
Record preservation.
Right, vital records.
Yes, so this has been a great mechanism for addressing these areas that are often overlooked.
And we don't have the money to do it otherwise.
That's exactly right.
This is great. And when the other, of those that you've mentioned are highlighted in here, with requests for this year, in addition to some improvements to the Stores House, which is a historic house connected to the library. So that's, I think these are great projects, and we don't expect a lot of difficulty having them approved, but you never know. That's the great thing about town meeting. So Article 27 is, to me, somewhat an extension of 17, no, not 17, the one that has to do with the 125,000, the employee benefits thing, but it's not. This doesn't go, explain 17 is asking for about $250,000 for a post-employment benefit liability trust fund. Do we have such a fund?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay.
And we deposited, it's
in a bank?
In a bag.
Oh, okay, so it's not
on the records.
So it's not like a stabilization fund.
Well, it is money that is set aside for which that we account for separately. In other words, it's not like we have a bank account for each thing. Funds may be commingled.
Oh, okay.
But what we do is we account for them separately and assign interest to them based on the interest rate of return, prorated. But in this case, other post-employment benefits, commonly known as OPEB, is an area that was identified by a number of years ago by the GASB, Government Accounting something Board.
Our long-term retirement liability, essentially. Is that essentially?
Yeah, it's the health insurance that we will owe on retirees into the future.
Not just health insurance, but what about their retirement? But that's from the state.
That we pay as an assessment to the state.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
this is just for the health insurance.
This is health insurance benefits.
Because upon a retirement, our employees are entitled to health insurance for life.
That's correct.
A percentage of, not 100%, but 50%.
And this would be the sum that is not, for example, we've adopted Section 18 of Chapter 32B, which means that retirees that qualify go on Medicare.
Right.
And then this is that sum of money that we still have to pay 50% of that.
So do we draw from this now, or this is just for
No.
future? Right now we pay for this. This is in case it gets out of control.
Right. We
know it's going to be growing.
Right now we pay as we go.
Right.
And that's included in the appropriation for health insurance and employee benefits. This is setting aside funds for future liabilities.
So I'm just interested that it's called a liability trust fund, not a enterprise fund. So we can withdraw from this. You need a 2/3 vote to take money out of this.
No, this is
different.
This is different than a stabilization fund.
By design, I'm
right,
sure.
And you can see adopted under Chapter 20 of Chapter 32B. This is a special fund set aside for this purpose. It's not a stabilization fund.
I love this. I'm continuing to learn. Okay, and then the last article, that's 27. The last article is, interestingly, the only one I believe I found in the entire warrant that is not recommended by the Finance Committee. And it appears that it's not by petition, but that it's by the Audit Committee.
Yes, this is an article that the Audit Committee requested be on the warrant.
And it is it says to transfer from available funds in the Treasury the sum of $10,000 to evaluate allocation of public works personnel and operating costs. So that means, the way I interpret that, and I have no idea what it means, is that somebody from the outside is going to come in and say if we're running our DPW correctly?
No, I think it's more around, we've had ongoing debates about, we have a consolidated DPW. And the question is, are we allocating personnel properly for water, sewer?
Parks.
Well, generally I look at it in terms of general fund, water, sewer, solid waste enterprise funds. Although in discussion with some select board members, they have, they want, some of them even want to drill down deeper. Is it, allocation for maintenance and land, for grounds maintenance, and even lower down. But there's been a lot of debate about how we allocate, which has been usually, unless people are specialized around a certain task. For example, our DPW director and our engineer, it's been 25% of their salaries from water, 25% from sewer, 50% from the general
Isn't there a lot of crossover?
Sure there is. And the challenge, the challenge, personally, I think it's a little bit of overkill. And, it's always a moving target. There have been years when our DPW, all of them were deeply engrossed in rectifying sewer problems.
Or leaf pickup.
Or
let us not forget.
Or water problems, or street problems. It's a moving target. And it's not like working in a law firm and saying, okay, I spent 15 minutes on the Smith case. What you need to identify is basically, in order to run any water department, in order to run any sewer department, in order to run any highway department, what resources do you need? And then you look at those resources, and then you take them and you spread them out through our operations. And the audit committee seems to feel that we need technical assistance to figure this out.
There's no problem, though.
I don't think there is.
Problem,
I
yeah.
really don't.
Okay.
But this has been a sort of an ongoing critique of how we do this. But we do it no differently than any other community in the Commonwealth.
So this will be debated. And the interesting thing is it's the last article. Might not be a lot of people left in the audience, so I will be there. Just for the record. But this is that's interesting. Thank you for explaining that, because I didn't make any sense to me.
I would say in the last couple of years there's been a lot of scrutiny about, do we have the right number of vehicles? Are we allocating things right?
But we already hired somebody to tell us if we have the right number of vehicles or not.
Yes.
So we had to bring in an outside firm, pay them to tell us if we had enough trucks.
I feel confident that the DPW director knows what he needs.
Yeah. Okay.
And I feel confident that, if anything, he's probably being very conservative. But not everybody on the citizen boards and committees share that confidence.
Sure. Well, interesting. So that brings us to the end of the warrant. So there's two other things I wanted to talk about. I mean, is there anything that we missed?
No, I think that pretty much covers
the
it.
town meeting ought to be somewhat. Will you give a presentation?
Yes, I'll give my usual budget presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
I've whittled it down to like 7 slides. I mean, it's the same old.
Well, and it's not that complicated this year.
No, we're actually adding a few things. We're capable. One of the deficiencies we have had and we've known for a number of years is in our human resources department. So we've got a plan to address those deficiencies, and that's being done through the budget. There are things that we've assessed and identified plans for.
And so when I say this is simple, it's just having been around the block a few times, realize that a lot of work went into making this look simple. This is a complicated document, and a lot of work went into the budget and making town meeting look simple. I mean, everybody could walk out and say, well, that was a piece of cake. Well, it's a piece of cake because everybody's done their homework beforehand for months and months and months to make it come off.
And there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of talking, a lot of, getting out the magic 8 ball and asking questions about revenue and seeing what the answer is. There's been a lot of deliberation behind all the numbers and what's being proposed.
And this is great. I mean, we're not looking at an override, so this is great. So just again, the town meeting is on May 8th. Let me get this straight. At 7 o'clock at
The high school?
the high school. This will be the last town meeting.
Yeah, we think so.
In the
Because
old
the
high
high
school.
school's is scheduled to.
We have a party. It's the last town meeting in the old high school.
Yeah, we're expecting that the new high school will be operational February of 2012,
Which will
13.
be before
That's
the
right.
next town meeting. That's terrific. So I just want to mention the special election, just because I think I'd be remiss not using the opportunity we have of an audience to mention that on May 15th, there's a, do I have that date right?
That's correct.
There's a special election for a one-year seat on the select board. This election was forced by a petition to the select board to have this election prior to the annual election, which is a month or less than a month
3
later
weeks.
than May 15th. That being said, there is going to be a special election. 2 individuals running for one-year seat on the select board. So just mark your calendars. And the last thing I want to say is, I know you're leaving.
Yes.
And I want to publicly thank you for your service
thank you.
to the town of Longmeadow. You've been a terrific person to work with as far as I'm concerned. And I know you've accomplished a lot. You've been here how many years?
7.
So when you first came in, we interviewed, and every year we've
Yes.
been doing it since, because the charter came, the town manager came,
Yes.
and you're the first. So good luck to you and
Well,
your
thank you.
pursuits.
Thank you.
And thank you. Anything you want to add? Or?
Well, I've really enjoyed the privilege of being Longmeadow's first town manager. I think it's no secret that it wasn't an easy transition to step into. There were a lot of issues
With the charter?
Charter implementation and the settlement with DEP, the environmental settlement that eventually cost the town about $5 million, and all the deadlines we have to meet. And you know, really turning around our finances, our tax collections, and I feel that we buttoned everything up very tight, very close. We met all the deadlines.
Maybe this is a reflection of that.
And I think it is. I mean, when you do things right, when you keep track of things, when you periodically reassess where you are, you aren't surprised. You can anticipate, and it makes the budget process look very seamless. So,
Yeah, okay.
and I just want to say this before I go. Longmeadow has a remarkable set of department heads and employees. I just really give a lot of credit to the department heads and the employees in this town. I don't think they get the credit they deserve, because they are top performers. They're very attenuated to the service and expectations of the community, and I think they've done a remarkable job stepping up to the plate and meeting my expectations and those of the citizens in the community.
Well, we'll have to do a better job thanking them. Pizza parties.
I think so.
Pizza parties. Well, Robin, thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
And thanks to our audience for listening. And please remember to do your homework and attend, if you can, the town meeting on May 8th at Longmeadow High School. Thank you and good evening.